Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome mobility platform leader, Kyle Reisner.
How's everybody doing today? Day two? Appreciate everybody coming to the session. You know, it's really been an enlightening couple days for me. Every conversation, and I don't even tell people I'm the mobility leader, and every conversation seems to be leading to a conversation around mobility and security. It's great. Well, today, we've got some really exciting news that we're gonna be talking about, and really something we've been working on for the past year that's really has come to fruition in the last couple months and really come together that really speaks to the journey of the mobile workforce, particularly in industry. But before I get there, I sort of want to start by telling you a story about my son. So my son, Riker, here he is. This picture was taken when he was about 2.5 years old in the spring, when that long winter broke. And Riker's a very curious guy, right? He's got a great personality. And for the first 2 years or so, he had that mommy phenomenon, right? Where everything's about mommy. For the last little while, it's been great to be a dad because now he realizes I exist. And that it's cool to hang out with dad. So much so he wants to go to work with me. He wants to go to the grocery store with me. He wants to go everywhere with me, including, you know, on my shoulders, on my back, you know, and the proverbial, you know, claw grip on the front that really kills your back that you get. Well, one thing we like to do as a family is we love to go cycling. And here's a shot of Riker, and he's now just turned 3. And this was a shot about a month ago. And we really, ever since they could sit up, we started to bicycle ride. And, you know, what's really interesting is that he's tipping the scales now at 40 pounds, and that picture doesn't do him justice. He's actually way too big for that seat. Because when we go on our bike rides, we also carry that, you know, 4 or 5 apples to feed the deer along the way, which is really exciting, but, you know, painful for me. I haven't had a relaxing bike ride in about 2 years, okay? And we tried those trailer things, and they just add extra weight. At the end of the day, I've realized why lower back pain and lower back pain solutions is a billion-dollar industry. So one of the things that I tried to do, me and my wife tried to do, to sort of break this cycle, to get him out to have a little bit of independence, was we went out and we bought a fancy, you know, vintage-looking bicycle or tricycle. And we even got the one with the basket on the front. You know, you got to carry stuff, right? Those juice cups that you consistently fill for your children. And we got one with a big wheel so it can go really fast, right? That 12-inch wheel. Really fancy stuff. And of course, they price these types of tricycles accordingly. And when we got it for him, we gave it to him, and he largely just ran away, right? He rejected the whole notion of this, right? And what that taught us is, you know, he wasn't ready to separate from being on the back of my bike, being on my shoulders, giving me lower back pain. And I went to him and I said, well, what's wrong with the tricycle? And he says, you know, I want to be with you, right? It's touching, yeah, I get it, but every parent in here, you know, realizes what I'm saying. So one day we were out in the backyard just doing yard work, and I lost track of him. We got a double-car garage, and both cars were out, and the tricycle was sitting there, and I come around, and lo and behold, he's on the tricycle. And I get that feeling of accomplishment that you get as a parent, rare feelings of accomplishment you get as a parent with a young child. And I'm walking up, and I got that background music in my head. You all have that when you have this. Mine was like Gladiator, now we are free, you know. I can have a relaxing bicycle ride. So I jumped on my bike, I went for a nice, relaxing, albeit painfully slow, ride around the neighborhood. And of course, Riker has a great personality. He prefers Hawaiian shirts with fireman boots. He's either going to grow up to be a singer, perhaps a performer like Liberace or something. Anyway, so what this taught me was a really profound thing about someone taking a leap out of their comfort zone and into something that they didn't really understand the value, but when it was presented to them initially. They looked at it only from one dimension. My son looked at this as a separation thing. He didn't look at it as something that could provide him a level of self-direction, a level of portability, and ultimately a level of freedom. He doesn't have to go where I go, and he routinely does that, right? You know, chasing him across the road, doesn't understand stop signs yet. So he looked at it from a different perspective, and that's what got him onto his tricycle and freed me from some lower back pain. Not all, we're getting there. So, how this sort of, translates into mobility is I was sitting down with our UX development team, our user experience team. We launched the user experience team in the software division last year at the event last year. And we sat down and I said, I was talking with them about our mobile strategy and what we're doing on mobile. And I think, I left that meeting with this story of my son in my head. And I said, he made a jump for self-direction, portability, and mobility. And this really flies in the face of every statement that I've heard as a industrial software product manager in the last, really 5 years on mobility. And these are some of the stuff I heard, right? Mobility is just another client. How many people have heard that, right? Replication of my existing system on a tablet is mobile. I can't have an iPad because they're for kids. They're not industrial enough. There's not a case for me. And then the proverbial, when I talk to technical people, Kyle, HTML5 is mobile. That's all it is. We just have to get to a converter. We just have to be native HTML5, and we're mobile. And I think this is only looking at it from one angle, just similarly how my son looked at that tricycle from one angle. What I wanted to seed in your head today is to look at mobility slightly different. Look at it from a different perspective than what those statements looked at it for. And I view, and Rockwell Automation views, mobility as an opportunity to fundamentally make tricycles, to give our users a level of self-direction, a level of portability, and a level of freedom they never had before. I always talk about the birth of the iPhone and really the success of that device in the market. And if you remember, the iPhone was launched with the best browser on the market. They launched it, they said, we're going to have people just go to websites and experience the iPhone. And then shortly thereafter, Apple went back and said, maybe an app, maybe if we open up apps to developers, but we control the experience to be a mobile-first experience. So it moves from a great browser. I always use the example of Yelp. I use Yelp all the time. Pinch and zoom. You've got that website is designed for every style of user, whether it be a 70-year-old grandma, myself, or my son when he can read. And they move to an app concept where within 3 touches I can get to find the restaurants for me or whatever else they have. But it simplifies it. And that fundamentally ramped up the sales of smartphones. And I'll argue with any of you that that is the sole reason why we use them today. It wasn't a device that simply did something that we had existing better. It transformed the way we interact with our phones and interact with the web for that matter. So if we start to look at mobility a little bit differently, rather than just, here's an iPad, and it replaces my desktop, my Dell PC that I've had in my plant for, 10, 15 years. Or here's my Surface Pro, and it's gonna, instead of putting remote terminals all over, I'm just gonna give my operator this and come up with a really slick, reliable Wi-Fi network. So one of the things that I want you to ponder is that moving from mobility as a simple user consumption tool, as an existing system consumption tool, to a mobile device enabling users like they never had before. Similarly, how that tricycle enabled my son to get off the back of my bike. And really, I look at user enablement under 3 pillars. It has to be role-based. It has to be specific to me, right? If I put a 2-wheel bicycle with no training rules in front of my son, that's not designed for a 2.5-year-old child. It's the right height. It's the right color for him. And at the end of the day, software has to be role-based, especially when you're mobile. And what that means is it's a contextualized experience. So when someone logs in, the system might learn your behaviors. And instead of you going back and designing user interfaces, designing predetermined lists that you're pushing to users, it learns that John is a maintenance person, and he should see these elements. Or he interacts with this area of the plant more often, so why make him navigate all the way down to the model? Just put that right front and center, because you're monitoring his trends, his or her trends. It's called a contextualized experience. The second pillar is easy to use and maintain. Now, I've worked in industrial software long enough to realize that this is really hard to do. We have complex systems, we have different versions, we have multiple vendors in our plants, and to get to that is really hard. And here at Rockwell Automation, we've done a very concerted effort to look at how easy it is to use not only our interfaces, but also to install our products. Ultimately, as easy as it is to ride a tricycle. And then the last one is the biggest one, enabling productivity. Productivity is a word that's been overused in the last decade, I know. But it gets to a point where you want to enable that maintenance person, that engineer, that operator, not to just do what they've always done in the last 10 years, but to wow them to something that they couldn't do in the past. And then we're going to see multiple mobile-type devices really take off. And it doesn't have to be complicated. I was at a water conference a couple years ago, and I met this integration firm that did this really simple app for the water utility in the local area. And he said a lot of people were retiring, and one of the guys just knew everything about the water utility. So he went and he grabbed some open source code on recording voice and tagging a geolocation to it. And they gave this iPod Touch to this worker, this guy, and they said, for the next 6 months, as you do your rounds, and you know what, here's a car, or maybe a truck. Drive around and just do voice memos of all the stuff that you know. So you're at this pump station or lift station, and he goes, 9 years ago, we had this $100,000 project, and we ripped this out, and don't use this motor because it doesn't work in this situation. And that very simple aspect, they couldn't do in the past. They did it through a very simple app. In fact, they probably could have got a free app to do that. But the concept here is putting features and functions that simply replicate existing systems on mobile devices doesn't necessarily look at the whole picture. Enabling productivity by enabling your users to do stuff that they couldn't do in the past. And I wanted to sort of hang on that point because I feel industry as a whole is looking at these devices as saying, just give me my screens. Give me my SCADA. Give me my EMI system on a tablet. Give me my control system on a tablet. And I do believe that increases some productivity. It gives access. But user enablement is really where we're going to see the ramp of adoption in industry. Every media outlet loves to talk about the growth of mobile devices. And when you peel back the numbers, the growth in the market is consumers. And it's a really slow adoption in manufacturing. And there's lots of reasons for it. We could go into a security conversation. We can go into a hardened conversation where the device is hardened. We can go into a price conversation. But I fundamentally believe that those complications can be solved if you find applications that deliver new value to users. The rest, it's solvable by the technology we have or our partners have. So I want to give some examples. These are hypothetical examples. I've got 3 of them. Some of them can be solved by the software products we have out. Some of them can be solved by the software product that I'm going to be launching today, or by some of our partners. And then some of them can't be solved today. But I want to give you an example of how this enables particular user profiles in industry today. So meet Joe. He's a maintenance electrician. He has a team of 5 other junior electricians. He's sort of late career, I call it. Don't want to call him old. Just did. But he's got his hard hat on, and he's got his tablet that was issued. And so he gets the end of his work week, and he wants to create a downtime report. So typical systems, some team created a downtime report, took 3 months or a year to put a system in to do that. You know, it's a fixed user interface, it's a fixed report, it's pushed out to users. But with Joe, he has new technology where right on his tablet, he can create a mashup report himself. He touches and drags and compiles a mashup report. He identifies the top 5 downtime issues for the week. He goes back to his desk. He dumps his tablet. He opens up the same product on his desktop. He tweaks the look and feel on his desktop. Then he shares that with his team. And one of the members on his team, let's call him Tim, calls up Joe and he says, the number 3 downtime report is false. That's been a chatter alarm. We haven't fixed it in the system. It's reporting wrong. Can you edit that out? So he edits that out, puts another item in there generated from the system, and then he doesn't send it to his boss. He shares it to his boss. And the key part here is that he's moving from a mobile situation in a traditional sense. He's using a tablet. Big deal. It's a matter of him transferring the knowledge and being portable across devices. And of course, it's available on his desktop for further sharing and manipulation. Maybe he runs that the next week or when it's requested again. Here's another example, Nate. He's a young engineer, just started with the company. About a year in, of course, he's at the coffee shop ordering his grande latte, no whip, extra cheese. He wants a hearty drink for lunch, you know? And he gets an alert. He gets an alert based off his role. He's an engineer. And the system starts to suggest other alerts that are correlated to that one particular alarm. Could be a message, could be an alarm, whatever. I use the term alert. Don't get all technical on me. But the point here is that the system says, this alert happened, and here's the 3 suggestions why the system thinks it happened. So it's mining historical alarm information, and it's suggesting to him. And the application allows him to receive that, and he says, well, you know, I'm going to follow the 3rd alert you suggested, and let me know if that goes high in the next 10 minutes. And he does that right from his mobile device. So then, you know, as he's sitting down, he gets that 3rd alert, says, yep, it happened. So instead of just getting on the horn or, you know, forwarding an email, he uses real mobile technology. And like that example of that water application, he records a voice memo attached to the alarm. And he goes, that old guy told me that retired 5 years ago, that valve 42 has always been a problem. Go check it out. And he forwards that to the operator. So he doesn't forward a structured work instruction. He forwards something that he had in his head, that he learned in his first year as an engineer there. And then he sets up on his mobile device a new rule for himself to say, if this alarm happens and this 3rd suggestion alarm happened, send me an alert. And then that is synchronized back down to the HMI. Again, something with mobile technology that you can't do today, that just extended a system from a pole-based system where you're staring at screens 24/7, looking at blinking lights, to what I call an exception-based mentality. And it enables the user, enables Nate. He didn't need a manual to go through that, didn't need training. It's so intuitive in an application that he can do it at the coffee shop. And it doesn't really matter that he's at a coffee shop. Of course, he can be in the cafeteria where most of us spend our time, or on the plant floor. So my last example is Scarlett. She's important because she's wearing a pantsuit. All right? She's a manager. And she's looking at her daily numbers and saying, She gets a high priority email from one of her workers, from her quality manager saying, hey, we got a quality issue. She works at a food and beverage plant. And quality issues are a very big deal at food and beverage plants. You don't want to be in a case of a massive recall or have someone injured because of what's going into your food. So there's a quality issue. We're getting metal shavings in our product. So she logs into the system. It's so intuitive. She connects directly to the tags and starts to analyze the system. She doesn't see the system in cryptic BL.5/2 means temperature. She sees the system in a logical fashion, and from her desktop or in her laptop, she's being able to open the system. She creates a little bit of a report. She sort of pinpoints the issue, but she goes, you know what? I was just over in Japan with her team over there, and I know Matt, who's an expert in this system, and I met him last week. I'm going to get him on the line. So she gets him into a conference call right in the same application, connects to him and says, what do you think? And he says, we've seen this at 6 other sites. It has to do with an auger. It's upstream. Let's get on with the operator right now. They three-way into the operator, it pops right up in his HMI, and they start to triangulate the issue. So a manager in a pantsuit connects to a remote expert, connects back down. Now I realize there's lots of underlying technology to make this happen. The point here is that you're enabling a user you never would have enabled with our systems to make a decision and triangulate the issue and get it on the horn. This type of issue today might have taken what in my past we called a tiger team, get 5 or 6 people to go do a Kaizen event and identify the issue, and 3 months later you're popping out, yeah, I guess we just shipped 3 months of products with metal in them. You're enabling the user like they never had before. And to close out that story, the operator then shares it with his colleagues across the shifts so that notification goes to all of them. So remember the story of the tricycle. I gave something to my son that he was in fear of using because it was going to separate him from me. This is separating you from traditional systems and enabling them like they never had before. And it gives them a level of self-direction, portability, and freedom, just like the tricycle did for my son. So what's the common theme in here, and is if you haven't triangulated it yet, I'll hit it home for you. As Joe, Nate, and Scarlett didn't go to our system documentation, which I like to say is measured in pounds, we've all been there. We've had to do that 10% left on the project. You got to go usher in bring in the fridge cart of all that documentation to the customer and drop it off, and then do 3 weeks worth of training. None of them were trained to use these tools. They were as intuitive as the devices that you find and intuitive as the applications and the workflows that you find on your mobile device. And that's really the fundamental change when I talk about giving self-direction to users. And it's just not us saying this here at Rockwell. I pulled this quote from Control Engineering, the 2012 edition. I forget what month it was. I think it was June. Enterprise mobility is a priority to us. I haven't talked to one IT person or control person in the last 5 years that hasn't really said that. Security compliance. Yep, those are the 2 top things in every ARC and Gartner report. But I highlighted this, and finding the right mobile workforce applications are among the key concerns. And I'd like to challenge you to think about, if you find the right application, solves become apparent for security and compliance. If you start with trying to secure devices, and you start in trying to make sure you can control them, without the end application in mind, without how you're changing Nate's life, or the other 2 examples I used, it's really hard to come up with a business case to say, I just want to give iPhones to everybody in my plant. Why? Well, they want to be able to see the HMI from in front of the furnace instead of down the furnace. Well, you're going to end up in situations with safety concerns, OSHA, all this other kind of stuff. And I truly believe this is the reason why we haven't seen the big adoption of mobile devices in industry. So just to close this out, we're taking a very deliberate approach to ensure we have a community that will use the tools we put out there. Use the tools. He doesn't want to have the frustration that I had with my son at my nice $200 fancy tricycle sitting there for 2 weeks and, just pile it on the other 15 toys we bought him in the last 2 years that he doesn't use. So what have we been doing here at Rockwell? Told you that we've got some announcements today? Yeah. Got an announcement. But early part of this year, we announced this product, and it really started us down the journey. So this is Vance Point EMI. It's a Windows native mobile app that really enables users to interact with Vantage Point data differently. If you haven't seen this, come to the mobility bar and we'll show it to you. This connects to a Vantage Point server. It allows an ad hoc way of interacting with the information in a native touch environment. And this was really our first step into say, how do we really enable users differently? Very well we could have told you, hey, to support Surface, just use an RDP app and open up the existing UI. We fundamentally changed the way people look at it. And it's got some really cool features on being able to map against or put the KPIs on a map. So, I call it a creature feature, but from the perspective of being able to map your KPIs across your plant, or in case you're in a wide setted area, it's pretty cool and pretty handy. But we've taken advantage of some really interesting Microsoft technology to do this. And since then, what we've been working on is something we're calling Vantage Point Mobile. And here's some screen captures of Vantage Point Mobile on a phone. And this is showing, going back to the contextualization comment that I made earlier. John Doe logs in. He has his favorites, his views, his settings. It's being stored for him. We're starting to go down the path of contextualizing it. From there, you can navigate down into the model. Of course, if you're a Vantage Point user or an EMI user, or understand the concept of the model, this is pretty basic. But we really took our UX DT team and our engineering team and said, let's take a conservative effort on how this looks, how it feels. We want people to be able to pick up this application and run with it. We don't want to have to wheel in a pound manual and sell 3 weeks worth of services to use this product. This is really a fundamental difference in the way we develop software at Rockwell. I call it the mobile-first way of developing software. You start with the smallest piece of glass, and you work backwards from there. Because inevitably, when you get back to the desktop, things are a lot more simple. And you see this in the consumer industry. If you're Twitter users, if you're Facebook users, the user interface on the device is very similar to when you go back to the desktop. And they started with a mobile-first design philosophy. So here you see bottle extruder. We're going to dive down into there. The bottle extruder has a number of displays. These displays can be created on the device. People tell me, well, I can't do that on that small of real estate. Well, there's certain features you can do on a small device, but when you go back to your desktop, maybe you can do more. But it all gets translated back to the phone. And we're using some responsive design philosophies, infinite scroll perspectives. Not easy stuff to do. We're hiding the complexity to the user. So you select the display. You can edit your favorites. Right from there, the favorites are saved. So if he switches devices and he logs in from a different source or a different device altogether, it follows him, follows John. And then you can do some trending. And we said, well, why don't we just stop there? Why don't we just give people with a phone the ability to trend a KPI? And that could help them, right? But we said, we did some conversations with customers who said, you know what, we got to put gauges in. Everybody wants to see gauges, right? So this opened up the concept of widgets. So creating widgets and being able to add them to the product is a foundational component now of Vantage Point Mobile. So as we start to rev this component of Vantage Point, we can add more widgets. Sort of those sleeper features that people really like. And then you could create widgets too. So the point here is that you're enabling the user with a device that we could have just said, just log into the existing system, pinch and zoom, navigate around. Fundamentally different experience. right? You can give this to a manager, you can give it to an operator, you can give it to an engineer. It increases your ability not only for people to look at the data, but maybe to impact the business a little bit better. And ultimately, maybe get more funding for your project. And another element of this is the concept that we've detached this user interface and this component of Vantage Point from the core Vantage Point. And we can rev this quicker. Meaning we're gonna learn how you guys use it in the field, how our integrators look at it, what widgets we wanna make in the future, and we wanna rev this every quarter. But we're not gonna make you have to upgrade your server. So once you get on the new version of Vantage Point, you can hit the mobile update and not have to go back to your Vantage Point server and update it. So it allows us to improve this at a speed that we haven't seen before. And when you go back to your desktop or tablet, it's portable. It goes right back. It's called responsive design. It's a design philosophy in HTML5. But the concept here is that you go back to your tablet and you turn your tablet, your iPad mini, you turn it sideways. Oh, you get the ability to add widgets, create displays. You turn it upright. You don't, because we don't have enough real estate. But it's all in there, right? And then going into the Surface, into the desktop. Really, any device. It's really device agnostic. So the exciting part today about this product is that this is included with every Vantage Point user today and every Vantage Point customer today. We are serious about mobile, and we really want to move the needle on adoption of mobile technologies in plants, manufacturing, and every vertical out there. So we're including it. And for you historian people who aren't yet got Vantage Point, there's a limited trial that you can do to get into experience it. So we're just not launching this product. We're announcing the product, because my next slide, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're starting to ship this product in August. And during that time, myself and the UX-DT team at Rockwell are going to be leading what's called a mobility diary study. And what this is, new term for me, 6 months ago I learned what a diary study is. Essentially, this is an extended study, 30, 60-day study. We're currently scoping it out. And we encourage you, inside the TechEd app right now, you click on Info List, you click on Help Shape the Future, there's a website for you to join our UX research panel. And what we're gonna do is, we got about 200 people involved with it right now. We launched last year, and we're seeing great uptick. And the UX group really takes care of, you know, from when you install the software all the way to when it's supported, plus all the stuff in between, right? And they've been a great help for us to understand how users can really use our products. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna get together in a couple weeks, and I'm gonna be able to essentially select people who are part of the UX panel to engage with them and say, hey, here's Vantage Point 6.0 with the mobile component. Here's a bunch of questionnaires. I want your operators to go use it. You're an integration house. I want you guys just to stand it up inside your office and tell me your thoughts. And of course, we'll scope it out so the thoughts aren't like, I don't like your background color. Gray is the color, all right? We're talking about what features can really drive mobile. We really want to learn how the application can move forward. Maybe the best feature is that little voice addition that I had Nate do in the example. We want to build not just a tricycle, like the analogy to my son. We want to put rockets on it, and we want to rev it every quarter so we learn fast to drive value. So I encourage you to take a look at that. We've got a bunch of people at the mobility bar that can help you get you signed up as well. So those two components are being launched in August. And what I want to do is bring you back to the fundamental component of this talk, is that we view mobile at Rockwell Automation as going beyond just simply replicating our existing experiences. We want to deliver to users, to integrators, to end customers, and allow you guys to take our products into spots where you couldn't in the past. Solve problems in using mobile technologies that you couldn't solve using traditional technologies. And by that, we're creating software components that give users the ability to be self-directed, to be portable no matter the device, even going back to the proverbial laptop or desktop, because they're not going away, and to have freedom to have their own self-direction. And we truly feel this is going to change the world just like it changed my world of lower back pain with my son jumping on the tricycle. And maybe next year here I'll have a story about my son with his mobile device. He'll be 4. I think it's about time he gets an iPhone. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.